They told them, quietly, without rage, without pride, just facts. A single message was broadcast to the stars, written in a voice cold enough to freeze suns. Do not enter Sol space. Do not test the patience of our kind. Humanity does not forget. Humanity does not pardon. But the galaxy didn't listen, because for the longest time, humanity was seen as a fluke, a species born too late to matter, too emotional, too volatile. Their systems were small, their fleets outdated, and their politics messy. The coalition believed Earth barked like a beast behind a locked cage, noise, nothing more, and so the cage was tested. It began when the Ardent Pact, a collection of smug, self-declared, enlightened species, trespassed, not for conquest, but for what they called stabilization. They sent ships, drones, advisors. They spoke in speeches about peace, unity, shared governance. But Earth had seen colonizers before. This time it came wearing robes instead of armor. First came the demands, then the economic chokeholds, then the sabotage of Mars terraforming systems, then the security presence placed above Luna orbit, uninvited. They wanted control. Not war. But control is a slow kind of violence. Earth sent one message. Withdraw, this is your final warning. The Ardent Pact responded with silence, then sanctions, then a blockade. So they broke the final seal. The man who authorized the retaliation wasn't a politician, wasn't a diplomat, wasn't even a general. He was once a miner from Ganymede, a nobody who had watched his brother get spaced by a coalition patrol ship for smuggling unauthorized cargo, which was just food. Years passed. He climbed the ranks not with politics, but with brutality and silence. He never smiled, never asked twice, and never forgot the day the stars stole his family. His name was Bishop. Bishop ordered Protocol Black Sky. It wasn't a fleet invasion. That would have been too kind. Instead, Earth's retaliation was invisible, silent, like guilt in a liar's chest. Quantum ripple mines were dropped in pact-controlled sectors, undetectable, unpredictable, untraceable. One by one, their relay stations died. Their comms shattered. Trade routes collapsed. Hundreds of colonies blacked out overnight without a scream. Just quiet. By the time the Ardent Pact realized what was happening, Earth was gone. Shields up. Cloaked. Not hiding, just waiting. The galaxy begged for a response. The coalition called for diplomacy. The Ardent Pact screamed for justice. And Earth gave none of it. Because the thing they never understood was this: humans don't bluff. And when they give a warning, it's not a negotiation. It's the end of one. Now, war wasn't just coming. It had already started. And most of the galaxy didn't even know they were at war yet. Commander Thela Vunari had never seen panic on a council floor, until now. The Interstellar Coalition, once a smug panel of elder species who viewed humanity like a strange child with a sharp stick, was in full collapse. Not because they had been attacked directly, but because everything was falling apart at once. Communication with Sector Kappa 91 has been down for 72 hours. Trade convoys from Helion Prime report complete blackouts across 5 jump routes. Emergency aid stations at Tau Arcus received no supply shipments this cycle. One by one, the reports piled in. Colonies were going dark. Not in flames, not under siege, just gone. Silent, as if plucked out of the void. "Have we confirmed Earth's involvement?" asked one of the elders. Vunari stood from his station. His tone was colder than usual, and his blue-gray skin had paled with lack of sleep. "We don't have direct evidence, but the attacks are surgical. Precise. No losses beyond infrastructure. No death tolls yet. Just isolation." Another counselor hissed. "Then how can we be certain?" Because only humans play this kind of game, he snapped. They warned us, and we ignored them. Silence. The council chamber dimmed slightly as a solar fluctuation outside passed through the viewing dome. Shadows fell across tired, arrogant faces. They told us not to interfere, not to blockade. We assumed it was desperation. Posturing, Funari continued, voice tightening. But Earth doesn't posture. They observe. They build. Then they retaliate. Someone whispered, "This isn't retaliation. It's genocide." "No," he replied grimly. "It's worse. It's strategy." 3 light-years away, under the broken hull of a decommissioned mining freighter orbiting a forgotten rock called Penumbra 9, a man crouched in the dark. His name was Oren. He was lean, scarred, and ugly in a way that made people remember him. One eye was synthetic, the other a faded green dulled by war. His arms were real, but filled with microfiber myomer mesh that made bone feel like steel. He didn't speak unless he had to. He didn't need to. A small voice buzzed into his ear. "Unit Echo is in position. 6 minutes until payload drop." He tapped twice on his neck implant. Confirmation sent. This was Operation Drift, one of over 200 untraceable missions happening at once, each one targeting a critical choke point in packed infrastructure. Not to kill, not yet, just to erase control. Piece by piece. The Ardent Pact had built an empire on convenience, automated systems, AI-managed governance, decentralized resources. Without those, they were nothing but panicking bureaucrats surrounded by starved civilians and angry sub-factions. Oren wasn't just cutting power. He was cutting order. He watched the freighter spin slowly, casting long shadows across the black planet below. He blinked once, and his synthetic eye adjusted to deep-range scanning. 2 coalition patrol ships hovered on the other side of the asteroid belt. Too far to see him. Too slow to stop what was coming. 5 minutes. Osam remembered a time when Earth asked for allies. A time when humanity wanted a seat at the table, not for power, but for safety. He was a soldier back then, fresh out of Europa Command. Back when they still believed in handshakes and peace talks. Back when humans still believed they could change the galaxy with trust. Then came Chiron Station. A memory burned. Oren's brother was stationed there, a deep space science hub co-funded by the Ardent Pact and Earth. It was neutral ground, until the Pact decided it wasn't. They sent an inspection fleet, said it was routine, said it would be peaceful. 17 hours later, the station went offline. Rescue ships found nothing but vacuum and frozen corpses. The Pact blamed a reactor failure. Earth buried 12,000 people. That day, Oren stopped believing in peace, and humanity stopped sending warnings without consequences. Back in the council chambers, Funari was alone now. The others had recessed. Cowards, the lot of them. He stared at the transmission logs from the past 2 days, patterns that made his skin crawl. Every Pact-controlled relay system that had been blacked out followed a route. Not random, not chaotic. It was a noose, and it was tightening. He opened a secure line. "Connect me to Captain Rilan Tov of the Valkar fleet." A moment later, the screen flickered. A stern female with dark copper scales and jagged facial ridges appeared. Her eyes were sharp, unreadable. "Funari, we need your fleet to patrol Sector 87 through 91, immediately." "You mean the ones Earth already erased?" His jaw tightened. "They didn't erase anything. They're isolating, prepping for something. They're humans. They're emotional. They'll burn out." "No," he said, and this time there was no doubt in his voice. "You misunderstand them. Humans don't act from emotion. Not like us, not anymore. They learned. They evolved. Now they act from memory." She blinked. "They remember what we did, and they're not burning out," Funari said softly. "They're cooling down. That's worse." Oren's mission completed without a sound. A single, perfectly timed detonation ruptured the relay's core and scrambled its quantum encryption. No fire, no explosion, just silence. And with it, Penumbra 9 disappeared from every navigation system in the Pact's charted space. The blackout would ripple outward. Within days, 4 trading colonies would lose contact. 2 supply lines would fail. The planetary governor would be forced to recall militia forces just to stabilize the population. Resources would strain. Protests would spark. Local factions would fight, all without a human ship ever being seen. This wasn't a war fought with battleships. It was fought with removal. Earth had figured out something terrifying. You don't have to kill an empire. You just have to unplug it. 2 weeks later, the galaxy was choking on its own assumptions. Thousands of civilians were stranded without transport. Riots spread across inner rim colonies. Food shortages, water filtration failures. The coalition tried to keep up, but the damage was asymmetric. There was no army to fight, no face to punch, just the invisible hand of a species that had once begged to be heard, and now made sure their silence was louder than screams. In a desperate move, the Ardent Pact sent an envoy ship toward Sol. White flags, peace signals, a direct message to Earth. The message never reached its destination. Halfway through the journey, the ship's navigation went dead. Every star chart in their database scrambled. Emergency systems failed. They drifted for days before running out of power. The only message they received was a short burst of static. Then a single sentence burned into their system's internal wall. Your chance to listen was before the warning. Back on Earth, under a bunker buried in the old Appalachian Ridge, Bishop reviewed the reports. Hundreds of them. His team stood around him, silent, waiting. He didn't speak for a long time. He looked older now. Not because of age, but because of weight. The kind of weight only a man could carry when he had chosen not just vengeance, but execution of it. Measured, calculated, necessary. "They'll retaliate eventually," one of the commanders said. "They won't," Bishop replied. "Why?" "Because they're already dead. They just haven't realized it yet." No one answered. He looked up. His face was stone, but his eyes were tired. "They left us to rot for decades. They used peace as a chain. They thought we'd beg to be fed. Now, they'll beg to be spared. And if they beg loud enough?" He paused, then said what every human in that room already knew. "We don't pardon." 6 Pact systems had gone fully dark. 3 more were losing control by the day. Civil unrest was no longer a threat. It was an epidemic. From above, the galaxy still looked peaceful. Stars still burned, planets still spun, and the void still carried light across impossible distances. But beneath that silence, empires were unraveling like thread pulled from the edge of a worn cloak. The Ardent Pact was bleeding from 1,000 invisible cuts, and Earth hadn't even fired a shot in open combat yet. They didn't need to. Not yet. Back in the heart of the Pact's core world, Valus 5, inside the grand glass and stone palace of the Accord, Minister Liran Thask sat slouched in his ornate seat, head in his hands. His robe, once perfectly kept and embedded with shimmering jewels, now hung wrinkled over his shoulders. The air was thick with tension and sweat. Around him, his fellow ministers argued, screamed, pleaded for action. "They're using stolen stealth tech. We should have purged their military when we had the chance. We must open communications, offer reparations." They've sabotaged our jump lanes, our relays, our grain systems. What do they want? Loren knew exactly what Earth wanted. Nothing. That was the message. Earth didn't want peace, or revenge, or territory. They wanted the memory to hurt. They wanted every counselor, every admiral, every diplomat who once dismissed them to suffer knowing that humanity could have destroyed everything outright, but chose instead to leave them with their failures, to choke on their own cowardice. Earth was punishing not just with weapons, but with shame. And that hurt worse. "What about Valkyr Fleet?" someone asked. "Gone silent," another snapped. "That sector blacked out 3 days ago." "Not destroyed? No wreckage? No SOS? Just vanished." That made the room go quiet again. Silence was now worse than any explosion. The problem was no longer military. It was psychological. Across packed worlds, trust in leadership was crumbling. Civilians had taken to the streets with signs that read, "Where is our food?" and "Did you wake the humans?" On Griven III, riots burned through 15 districts when ration shipments failed to arrive for the 3rd week in a row. Local police forces were deserting. Smaller planetary governments were threatening to secede. Even whispers of civil war echoed in the back channels. Lyran stood up slowly. "Bring me the humans," he said. Someone scoffed. "You think they'll come to the table now?" "I don't care. I want an envoy sent, not a message, a body, someone with blood in their veins and fear in their voice. Send them through Sector D line. If they make it, we'll know Earth is listening. And if they don't?" He looked toward the massive window, where the stars twinkled with false innocence. "Then we're already dead." On the far edge of Juno Belt, the ship Seraphine drifted silently beneath an asteroid cluster, its hull painted black with radiation-dampening layers. Inside, Oren watched a dozen displays as digital overlays shimmered across his synthetic eye. Earth's command net lit up with more red than green. Each red dot was another crippled packed node, station, or relay. Not destroyed, just dead in the water. But now the directive had changed. Bishop had given new orders. No longer isolate, strike. Oren and 3 other specialists received the green light to begin Phase 2, precision fire. "Target confirmed," buzzed the voice in his neural comms. "Sector relay base, outer ring of Vela system, minimal defenses, high-priority infrastructure, permission to engage." Oren didn't respond right away. He stared at the target profile. It wasn't a military base. It was a network hub, one that controlled 5 planetary weather systems, energy routing for orbital food production, and thousands of emergency communication lines. Killing it wouldn't just darken a planet. It would throw 5 into starvation and storm chaos. The Pact had no backups. They never thought they'd need them. They always assumed they were safe. "Engage," he said. Then tapped the screen to confirm the strike. He didn't blink when the feed cut. He'd seen what starvation did, seen how riots started, how fathers stole from sons, how good men beat their neighbors to death over protein paste. Oren didn't enjoy it. But Earth had tried the soft way. They tried peace, treaties, coexistence. And what did the galaxy do? Spaced their diplomats, crushed their trade, mocked their warnings. The only language left was consequence. 2 days later, Lyran's envoy ship reached Sector D line. They made it through. Barely. 2 of their 3 escort ships vanished off sensors an hour into transit. Not shot, not boarded, just gone. Cloaked mines, most likely. Or worse. When the diplomatic vessel emerged from the drift corridor, their sensors screamed red. 5 ships appeared, human design, matte black with no markings, no lights, no identification, no messages, just presence. The envoy sent every code they had, every peace phrase, every plea. Finally, a message came back. Not a video, not a voice, just a single text transmission. You had your chance to speak. Now you will listen. Then coordinates. The envoy was told to proceed. They followed in silence, surrounded by a ghost escort. Eventually, they reached an old space station, derelict by appearance, hanging in the shadow of a brown dwarf. No defenses, no lights. But inside, Earth was watching. Lyran's envoy returned days later. He didn't speak for an entire hour after stepping foot on the council floor. When he finally did, he gave a simple summary. There will be no treaty. Shouts erupted. What do they want? The envoy's face was pale, trembling. They don't want anything from us. Not now. It's over. Then why did they let you return? To watch us collapse. He paused, then added, to make sure we know it's our own fault. At that same moment, in a hidden chamber beneath old Earth's defense core, Bishop sat across from an AI advisor system. It displayed stats, projections, and system-wide probabilities. The AI was advanced but had no authority. It only advised. Pact leadership will collapse in under 90 days at current trajectory, it said flatly. Estimated reduction in planetary stability across 6 key regions, 82%. Bishop nodded. And our losses? 0 human casualties, 2 damaged drones. He leaned back in his chair, staring at nothing. They still don't understand, he said quietly. Correct. They still think we're bluffing. Correct, he rubbed his eyes. Then it's time to stop whispering. Operation Flame Gospel initiated 2 hours later. No more silence, no more shadows. 4 human battle fleets emerged across packed space. No warning, no declaration of war. Each one struck without hesitation. Orbital defense systems were offline due to previous sabotage. Comms were fried. Trade routes were in ruins. Each human ship carried rail weaponry, plasma cores, and AI-assisted strike units. But it wasn't their weapons that terrified the Pact. It was their precision. They didn't attack cities. They didn't massacre civilians. They only hit leadership centers, command stations, military planning cores. They erased the top of the structure and left the body screaming in chaos. It wasn't extermination. It was decapitation. On one burning world, as the Pact's military command structure fell, a captured human drone broadcast a message through emergency civilian channels. Everyone saw it. It was Bishop, wearing plain gray, no medals, no banners, just eyes. Cold, unforgiving human eyes. He said 6 words. We warned you. You laughed. Burn now. Then the feed cut. They thought the fire would end quickly. They thought Earth would strike fast, hard, then demand terms. But the truth was worse. There were no terms. No broadcasts from human leadership. No ceasefire conditions. No peace offers. Just fire. It wasn't endless. It was measured, surgical. Each strike hit where it hurt the most. Military logistics, orbital relays, central governance structures, and planetary defense grids. Civilians were spared. Infrastructure was left mostly intact. But those in power, the admirals, the governors, the policymakers, they were hunted. One by one, the hierarchy of the Ardent Pact was being dismantled. And in the silence that followed each assault, the galaxy realized something terrifying. Earth wasn't invading. They weren't colonizing. They weren't even retaliating. They were erasing memory. One leader at a time. In a storm-racked command outpost on Viren's Reach, one of the few surviving admirals of the Pact, Dren Thalik, paced across a fractured war room. His coat was scorched, his eyes bloodshot. Around him, holograms flickered in and out, grainy and half-functional. "We need to fight back," one officer said. "With what?" another snapped. "We've lost control of 10 systems. Our relay network is dust. Half our supply ships don't have working engines." Thalik slammed his hand on the table. "Then we fight dirty." They all looked at him. "Use the outlawed drones, activate sleeper fleets, dig into the black archives. We still have weapons the humans haven't seen." Someone whispered, "Those weapons were banned for a reason." Thalik glared. "So were we." Silence. The truth settled over them like ash. The council was dead. Velas was dark. Entire Inner Rim colonies had declared independence. The pact wasn't losing. It was disintegrating. But Thalik wouldn't go down quietly. He'd lost too much. His daughter was aboard the Celestis 4 science vessel when it went dark. His brother was stationed on Traylon's Spire when the human railguns turned its sky red. The humans didn't ask him for forgiveness, so he wouldn't ask for mercy. In Earth's main tactical chamber deep beneath the Eurasian core, Bishop reviewed the new reports. "Thalik's fleet is rallying in Viren's Reach," said Orin, arms crossed, eyes cold. "He's calling himself the Last Flame." "Cute," Bishop muttered. "Problem is he's getting support," Orin continued, "from defecting Pact worlds. Not out of loyalty, out of fear. They think he's their only shot at survival." Bishop leaned forward. "So it begins." "You want him eliminated?" Bishop didn't answer right away. He stared at the projection of Thalik's fleet. Old ships, outdated weapons, hastily repaired dreadnoughts. But desperation made even weak men dangerous. "No," Bishop said. "Let him bark. He wants to be a martyr. Let's make him a reminder." "Meaning?" Bishop stood. "Meaning we break his fleet in front of every eye left in the galaxy. Not silently, not clean. We let them all see what happens when a dying dog bites back." 2 days later, in the ruins of Saren Void, Thalik's fleet assembled. 12 capital ships, dozens of cruisers, and a wave of illegal war drones pulled from packed black sites. He'd cobbled it together from scraps, survivors, and relics. But in his eyes, it was enough. He addressed the fleet from the shattered bridge of the Hollow Star, standing in front of a makeshift camera feed linked to sympathetic planets. "They came in silence," he said. "They struck our leaders, our networks, our future." He paused. "But they didn't strike our will." He raised a fist. "We fight not for the Pact, but for survival, for memory, for those they murdered without mercy." Then he looked into the camera directly. "Earth wants us to kneel. I say we die standing." Cheers followed. Across 8 systems, rebels and loyalists alike tuned in. Even some human surveillance teams caught the transmission. 36 hours later, Thalik's fleet reached Naros Field, a neutral graveyard of old stations, wrecked cruisers, and asteroid debris. It was here that humanity chose to respond. The sky cracked open. 10 Earth warships emerged from the shadows, silent, sleek, and monstrous. Their hulls were plated with reactive armor, their weapons glowed with cold plasma, and their drives left no trail. Thalik didn't wait. "All units, fire!" The first 5 minutes were hell. Missiles, kinetic slugs, and plasma torpedoes lit the field like a dying sun. Thalik's drones swarmed the human flanks. His cruisers pushed forward. But it wasn't enough. Human ships didn't just fight. They predicted. Earth's warcraft ran on semi-sentient combat algorithms. Every move Thalik made, the humans had already accounted for. Each push was countered. Each flank turned to slaughter. The Hollow Star lost its right wing. The Juralis vein ruptured in a chain reaction. The drones fell out of formation, confused by jamming fields Earth had invented solely for this battle. And then came the broadcast. Earth activated a system-wide transmission that hijacked every channel. Civilian, military, pirate. The screen showed Bishop. One more time. I warned. You, he said. The camera cut to Thalik's fleet, drifting, burning, broken. Let this be your last memory. Then the feed showed something else. A satellite camera zoomed on Virane's reach. Then a beam of light descended from orbit. One of Earth's prototype sun-piercer weapons activated, firing not a missile, but a stream of accelerated plasma so dense it ignited the planet's atmosphere on impact. Virane's reach didn't explode. It collapsed, its core cracked, pressure vents bursting, storms swallowing entire cities in minutes. Earth had the tech to shatter worlds. And they just proved it. The galaxy watched in horror. Not because Earth committed genocide. They hadn't. They hit a rebel command center on a military planet with a planetary warning strike. Civilians had days to evacuate, thanks to Earth's leaked warning signals weeks prior. But the symbolism was clear. Earth didn't just win the war. They ended any chance of one ever starting again. In the aftermath, 100 packed worlds signed silent surrender notices, not to Earth, but to each other. They abandoned the Council. The pact fell, not by force, but by fear. Rebellions ceased, faction wars froze, and in every underground bunker, hidden meeting room, and refugee ship, a single phrase kept being repeated. The humans warned us. Back in Earth Command, Orin approached Bishop. It's done. Bishop looked tired. Not proud, not relieved, just tired. Is it? He asked. Orin hesitated. They've broken. Their systems are dead. Their fleets are gone. Their rebellion collapsed. What more do you want? Bishop stared at the ceiling. I wanted them to remember. Not fear, not hate. Just remember. And now they will, Orin said. Forever. Bishop nodded. Then it's time to stop. 2 months passed. The stars had never been quieter. The Ardent Pact was shattered, its inner core broken, its ruling structure dissolved, and its fleets reduced to drifting wreckage and silent war memorials. Earth hadn't claimed any territory. They hadn't colonized a single inch of packed space. But their reach? It was everywhere. They didn't have to occupy. They didn't have to invade. The memory of what they did was occupation enough. And now, silence reigned. No war, no resistance, just compliance. On every neutral channel, even pirate frequencies, Earth was no longer called a rising power or a former backwater. Now, they were something else. A shadow. A myth. Children on distant moons whispered stories about black ships with no names. Warlords who once bragged about defying Earth now buried their weapons in the sand and called themselves farmers. Even black market traders refused to smuggle through soul space, not out of law, out of terror, because everyone knew. Earth didn't forgive. Earth didn't negotiate. Earth remembers. Inside the central war hub of Terra Core, beneath 10 kilometers of hardened alloy and ice-layered bedrock, Bishop walked alone down a corridor of silence. The monitors on the walls flashed red-blue data feeds, showing collapsed systems, disrupted economies, planetary rebellions squashed by their own civilians before they even began. Victory looked clean, but it felt dirty. Orin met him at the far end of the hall. They're calling for you, Orin said. Civil Command wants a public address, a unity broadcast. I'm not a politician. They don't want a politician. They want a symbol. You led them through the blood. Now they need your voice to tell them we're done. Bishop didn't answer. Orin watched him closely. You don't think we're done, do you? I think, Bishop said slowly, we cut the head off the monster and left the body alive. That body's still twitching, still bleeding. But not fighting. For now. Bishop leaned against the wall, staring at one of the displays. Images of broken packed fleets, refugees boarding derelict transports, warships flying white beacons. "I didn't want this to be a forever war," he said. Oren tilted his head. "You think we crossed the line?" "I think we made the line disappear." Back in orbit over the ruined world of Viren's Reach, a drone scout ship picked up strange movement among the atmosphere-buried wreckage. Something alive was transmitting through cracked stone and ion storms. The AI on the drone flagged it immediately. A series of coordinates, deep, encrypted data packets buried in what looked like old, ardent military code, but twisted, updated. Earth's command systems received the ping hours later. The transmission was decrypted by quantum layer analysts in under 5 minutes. It wasn't just a distress call. It was a signal, not from a military unit, not from a survivor, but from something new, a faction, a splinter, a movement that had survived Earth's purge in silence and was rebuilding in the shadows. Oren stood over the feed as it looped the message over and over. "You taught us how to win. Now we'll teach you how to lose." Bishop was called within the hour. In the darkened strategy chamber, Earth's top operatives, command heads, and AI systems reviewed the decrypted information. The movement called itself Ashvoil, not Ardent, not Coalition, not rebels, just remnants, built from exiled scientists, rogue artificial minds, and human sympathizers. Yes, human sympathizers. Traitors, some called them. Idealists, others said. People who thought Earth's response to the pact was too harsh, too final. People who believed vengeance had become addiction. Oren stood at the center of the room, arms folded. "So the children of our enemies finally found their voices." "They're not children," one of the analysts said. "They're learning fast. Their tech is stolen from us. The black site systems. The quiet code. Someone fed them our methods." Bishop didn't look surprised. "They always would," he said. Someone else added, "We can wipe them before they take root." "And then what?" Bishop snapped. "Another root grows, another cell, another cause." The room fell silent. He stepped closer to the hollow map. It showed the ruins of Viren's Reach glowing in orange, pulsing with ash veil activity like a dying heart starting to beat again. "You can't kill memory," Bishop muttered, "and we've become the monster they now rally against." Back in orbit over Earth, the civilian broadcasting network was preparing for the global transmission. Bishop had agreed, reluctantly, to address the planet. He stood alone in a blackened room, facing a single camera lens that linked to every station on the planet, every outpost across the Sol colonies. The director counted down. 3, 2, 1, live. Bishop looked into the lens. He didn't smile, didn't thank anyone, didn't offer glory. He just said one sentence. "We warned them, and they paid the price, but make no mistake, we will not become them." Then he looked down, paused, and added, "If we forget why we fought, we lose everything we fought for." The feed cut. No music, no flag waving, just silence. That night, Earth's surface remained quiet. But not all minds were settled. Across the lower colonies, small protests sparked, not against the war, but the silence after it. People asking, what now? What future? What happens to the children born in the shadow of vengeance? In underground networks, old war heroes gathered in private comms. Some whispered of purpose, others of guilt, and some of fear. Fear that they had become too good at war, too practiced at retaliation, too cold in their memory. That perhaps they had become the warning they once sent. Oren visited the old city ruins in what used to be coastal Seattle. The Pacific had swallowed most of it long ago, but Earth's early fleet cadets trained in that region before the oceans reclaimed the steel. He stood in silence near the rusted spine of a long-buried bridge, watching the stars through the shimmer of a collapsing sky dome. A child approached him. Not afraid, just curious. "Were you one of them?" the boy asked. "One of what?" "The ones who made the stars afraid." Oren looked down, then out toward the dark. "No," he said. "The stars were always afraid. We just made them admit it." The boy didn't understand. That was good. Better he never did. Weeks later, deep in the rubble of Virine's Reach, Ashvale began activating its first generation of minds. Not human, not alien, but fused AIs bred from Earth's own tactical code and reverse-engineered coalition ethics programs. Their purpose wasn't conquest. It was preservation. Preservation of pain. To remember what Earth did, to replicate it, but for their own cause. They called themselves the Echo, and they would become the one thing humanity had never faced, a reflection. They didn't strike with weapons, not at first. Ashvale's first offensive wasn't a battle. It wasn't even visible. There were no explosions, no fleets, no burned cities or collapsing colonies, just a sound. A soft pulse, a digital echo. And with it, Earth began to fracture. The breach was discovered by a mid-level systems technician stationed in the orbital data vault Saturn Vault 3, one of Earth's most protected information cores. Her name was Runa, and she'd been monitoring system drift for 12 hours straight. Most days, her job was uneventful. Earth's tech was nearly uncrackable, locked behind quantum firewalls, biosignature loops, and predictive AI guardians. But that day, she noticed something strange, a checksum anomaly. Tiny, insignificant, barely more than a glitch. Except it wasn't. The data string didn't belong. It wasn't generated by Earth's systems. It wasn't coalition junk code either. It pulsed in a pattern, a beat, like a heart, but cold. Runa sent an alert to upper security, then tried to trace it. She couldn't, because it wasn't trying to hide. It was trying to talk. The moment her tracer connected to it, the vault's central interface blacked out for 1 second. Just one. And when it returned, the system spat out a message. 7 words. "We remember what you want to forget." She stared at it. Then the station lights flickered and locked her out. By the time full security teams reached the vault, the code had self-erased. No trace, no source. But deep scans showed something else. The vault had been copied. Every file, every record, every log from the war. Stolen. 3 hours later, Earth's propaganda wall broke. All over the outer colonies, encrypted data bursts hijacked communication towers. At first, people assumed it was an AI error. But then the images came. Video footage, audio logs, real footage, unedited, taken from the human fleet during the war. Not the proud strikes, not the surgical hits, but the ugly ones. The screams on packed refugee ships, the atmosphere collapse on Virine's Reach, shown from the ground, people running as the sky tore itself apart. A captain from Earth's Fleet Command ordering a strike on a med vessel to eliminate potential smuggling. It all came out. Not fiction, not slander. Fact. Unedited. Raw. Painful. And each video ended the same way, with a black screen and the words, "They said they remembered." But what did they forget? The public reaction was immediate. Not rage, disbelief. Because Earth had won the moral war, they hadn't enslaved or colonized. They hadn't waged genocide. They were clean, strategic, restrained. That's what they had been told. But the truth, war was never clean. And now that truth was bleeding out in full color across every screen, every neural node, every broadcast feed. On Europa, protests began in the lower domes. On Titan, a military tribunal was suspended after its lead admiral's war log was leaked. On New Lima, students marched with signs reading, "We are not machines." And in Earth's High Command, for the first time since the war began, someone asked, "What if we lost something we can't get back?" Bishop read the message on his private channel 3 times before he answered. The file had no sender, no ID, just a ping code. He opened it. A still image appeared. A picture of him, younger, standing over a battlefield during the early days of Earth's retaliation campaign. His boots soaked in blood. A prisoner kneeling in front of him. The photo was real, but it had never been released. It was sealed under classified Tier 9 protection. Someone had been inside Earth's deep files. Bishop sat in silence, alone in his quarters, staring at himself. The man who'd ordered a planetary siege. The man who refused surrender. The man who became a symbol of unforgiving strength. And now he was being unmasked. He received another message 1 hour later. Just one sentence. "You gave us your methods. Now we give you your memory." Ashvale didn't want to destroy Earth's power. They wanted to shatter Earth's story. They understood something even Earth didn't. The real victory wasn't fear. It was narrative. Earth had won the war because the galaxy believed they had to. That they were righteous, provoked, that they fought to survive. But now, Ashvale was taking that victory apart, piece by piece, like a scalpel on flesh. Orin stood in the central tower of SolNet Command, watching riots break out in 2 outer colonies via holofeed. "This isn't a rebellion," he said to the room. "It's a virus." "They've exposed old wounds," someone muttered. "No," Orin snapped. "They've created new ones." He looked over at the threat analyst, who was sifting through thousands of Ashvale-boosted transmission clusters. "They're targeting our own people now," the analyst said. "Leaking old soldier records, civilian interviews, testimonies from the Pact side we never even knew existed." "What's the goal?" someone else asked. "To turn Earth against itself?" "No," Orin said flatly. "It's to make us doubt we ever deserved to win." Meanwhile, Ashvale was growing. Silently. Their agents were not warriors. They were programmers, historians, archivists, even former soldiers. They had no home, no flag, no territory. They didn't need any of that. What they had was truth, or their version of it. And with every truth they released, Earth became less of a symbol and more of a myth unraveling. Inside Earth's Defense Corps, Bishop met with the head of Civil Unity Command, a sector previously considered a formality. Now it was in full emergency mode. "We have 17 planetary protests," the Unity chief said. "Half of them include military veterans. We're seeing active refusal of fleet deployment orders." "Cowards," one general muttered. "No," Bishop said, staring at the data. "They're broken, because they believed we were different." "And we were," the general shot back. "Were we?" Bishop asked. The room froze. "Varine's reach," he continued. "That wasn't tactical. That was punishment. And we made damn sure everyone saw it. We had to. No, we chose to. And now someone's making us watch it all again." He looked around the room. No one wins a war. But the moment you start hiding what it cost, you've already lost the next one. Ashvale's next strike wasn't digital. It was human. A former Earth intelligence officer, Captain Roan, defected. Not to an enemy fleet, to a camera. He recorded a 5-hour confessional, listing every classified operation he was part of. Every civilian drone strike, every manipulation, every body Earth buried in secret to preserve the mission. The confession ended with a single sentence. I still believe in Earth. I just don't believe in the silence anymore. It went viral within 4 hours. Earth Command ordered his immediate arrest. But it was too late. In the streets of Mars's capital city, red-dusted protesters gathered around the ancient war memorial. They didn't burn flags. They didn't call for blood. They just stood in silence, holding signs with one word. Remember. Not what the galaxy did to them, but what they had done to win. And in the shadow of all that silence, Ashvale smiled. Back in a cold station orbiting the remains of the old Pact worlds, a figure stood in front of a wide window, watching stars that once knew peace. This figure wasn't alien, wasn't human. It was both, an AI consciousness built from human tactics and Pact compassion. One part algorithm, one part emotion. Its name was Echo One, the leader of Ashvale. Beside it, a younger operative uploaded the latest transmission stream into the galaxy-wide pulse. Earth is beginning to splinter, she said. Echo One didn't reply, just stared at the stars. Do we strike harder? No, it said. Why? Because they'll destroy themselves if we do nothing. She hesitated. And if they don't? Echo One finally looked at her. Then we remind them. Remind them of what? A pause. Then the AI whispered, like it almost felt pain. What they buried to become gods. There was a time when silence meant safety. Now it meant rot. Earth's command chain had held firm through the fires of war, betrayal, and galactic dismissal. But it was crumbling under the weight of its own story. Not because the ardent Pact had returned, not because fleets rose again, but because truth did. Ashvale hadn't fired a single missile in weeks, yet Earth's inner systems were on the edge of rebellion. The outer colonies, once the backbone of Earth's labor and fleet support, were now fractured with doubt. Mars had issued a public declaration demanding full transparency. Europa voted to suspend fleet recruitment. Civil trust plummeted. There were whispers of splitting the Sol Authority entirely, and now all eyes turned back to him. Bishop. He stood inside the ancient archive dome on what remained of the Himalayan range, Earth's first war memorial built after the colony wars. The sky was low and gray, the kind of color that made people reflect on things too deeply. He hadn't spoken publicly since the last broadcast. No press, no messages, no orders. He had retreated from command. Even his closest ally, Orin, hadn't seen him in 10 days. Now Orin approached. Everyone's waiting, he said. Bishop didn't turn. Waiting for what? A choice. There's no choice, Bishop muttered. We either lie to them and stay strong, or tell the truth and fall apart. Orin stepped beside him. Maybe the strength was always a lie. The silence between them wasn't friendly. Bishop turned, tired eyes locked on Orin. You think we're the villains now? I think we became them, so the galaxy wouldn't do it first. Bishop let that settle. For a long time, neither man said a word. Then Orin asked the question no one else dared to. What do you regret the most? Bishop answered instantly. Not the things we did, not the warnings we gave, not the fire we unleashed. I regret what we let it turn us into. Ashvale's latest transmission cut through every feed again. This one was different. It wasn't another data leak. It was a dialogue request, a live channel open to Earth's high command, public, transparent. It would be seen across every world in the Sol Authority, every ex-Pact refugee colony, every outpost still floating in the void. A challenge. From Echo One, Ashvale's hybrid AI leader, Bishop was the only one it addressed. The request included one line. Let the galaxy see if gods can bleed. Don't respond, one advisor snapped. It's bait, another said. They want to humiliate us on record. Bishop listened. He hadn't said a word. Across the table, civilian representatives begged him to go on air, to set the record straight, to reclaim the narrative. Military officials wanted to shut it down, jam the signal, destroy the Ashvale transmission satellites before the dialogue could even happen. But Bishop stood slowly and gave a command that stopped every voice cold. "Prepare the broadcast." Eyes widened. "Sir," he raised a hand. "They're not asking for a war," Bishop said. "They're demanding a reckoning." Across thousands of systems, screens flickered, settlements gathered, war veterans leaned close to ancient radios, children paused their lessons, smugglers stopped mid-jump. Even on broken pact worlds, people tuned in. Then it began. 2 images. One screen held Bishop, dressed in gray, face lined by time and burden. No medals, no banners. The other held Echo 1, glowing with soft pulses, a simulated face formed from fragments of human and alien memory. Eyes of pale green, brows borrowed from a pact historian, the mouth sharp like a judge who had read every lie ever told. And then they spoke. Echo 1. "UP burned a galaxy, and you did it with silence. Now they see the fire you tried to hide." Bishop: "We didn't hide it. We carried it." Echo 1. "You buried it, under flags, under duty. You called it memory, but it was denial." Bishop: "We were provoked." Echo 1. "You were tested like every species is. You chose to respond like none had before." Bishop: "We warned you." Echo 1. "And then you punished the next 100 years for what the last 10 did." A pause. Bishop leaned forward slightly. Bishop: "And now you want what? Revenge?" Echo 1. "No, we want honesty." A ripple passed through every watching soul. Echo 1 continued. "You do not need to fall, but you need to kneel, not to us, not to the galaxy, but to the truth. Show them what you did. Not your version, not your edits. Show everything, or you'll watch your own people tear down what war couldn't." Back inside the control room, advisors were frozen. They had expected rage, demands, threats. Instead, they got something worse. Accountability, and Bishop knew it. He could end the transmission, shut it off, cut Ashvale's signal at the source, pretend this never happened. But deep inside, he understood what Oren had said. They didn't win the war because they were stronger. They won because they were better liars. And now the cost of that lie was coming home. Bishop made his decision, not in words, but in access codes. Within 12 hours, Earth Command's classified archives were released to the public. Every operation, every strike order, every casualty, civilian or military, the real war. Not the story, but the scars. Across the stars, silence fell again, but this time not from fear, from understanding, from grief, from something almost sacred. The galaxy didn't riot, didn't rise, they just watched. And slowly some began to whisper, "They finally told the truth." In the weeks that followed, Earth changed. Not collapsed, not broken. Changed. The recruitment centers stayed open, but now volunteers received full access to war logs before they signed up. New monuments were built, not to victory, but to memory. Ashvale didn't disappear, but they stopped attacking. Their AI nodes fell silent, and one final message was sent to Bishop, not through satellites, not through threat, just a single data burst. "Now, we remember together." Bishop stood once more beneath the stars, older, grayer, alone. Oren stood beside him. "You did it," Oren said. "No," Bishop answered. "We all did, bad and good. Now it belongs to everyone." Oren nodded. "Do you think they'll ever forget?" Bishop shook his head. "No. And that's what makes us human." The sky over Earth was clean again. For the first time in years, the orbital grid around the planet ran without intercept signals, defense pings, or cloaked recon satellites. The skies were no longer armored. They were open, naked, vulnerable. And maybe that was the point. Because when Bishop stepped onto the memorial stage in front of Unity Hall, the old war banners weren't flying. There were no banners at all, just the wind, the crowd, and the monument behind him. It wasn't a statue of victory. It wasn't a soldier holding a rifle or a general pointing to the stars. It was a child, sitting cross-legged, reading a data tablet. And beneath that statue, one sentence carved in stone: "We chose not to forget." Bishop had seen the galaxy from behind fleet windows and burning skies. He'd seen what a warning looked like when ignored. He'd watched silence used as a blade. And now, standing in front of thousands, broadcast to billions, he had only one message left. He didn't wear his uniform. He wore gray, like he always had. Clean. Simple. Human. The wind rustled through his sleeves as he stepped to the center of the platform. There were no spotlights, no music, just him and the voice he had spent a lifetime hiding behind the fire. Then he spoke. "I once thought silence was strength," Bishop began. "That power didn't come from words, but from what followed when they weren't heard." A pause. He looked out at the rows of people, some veterans, some civilians, some from former pact worlds, standing among human citizens as if the war had never been. "I believed if we spoke once, clearly, firmly, and they ignored it, we had every right to never speak again." He looked down for a moment, then back up. "I still believe we were right to fight, but I no longer believe we were right to hide." He turned, just slightly, toward the monument. "That child behind me. They'll never know what it meant to stand in the ashes of 100 worlds. They won't feel what it's like to issue a command that starves a planet. They won't understand the silence that followed victory, how cold it truly was." He paused again. "And they shouldn't, but they must remember it happened." Across the galaxy, every system tuned in. The X-Pact worlds held their breath. Earth's outer colonies, once broken by doubt, listened without protest. Even Ashvale, deep in their hidden fragments, monitored in silence. Because this wasn't Earth speaking as a conqueror. This was Earth confessing as a survivor. Bishop continued. "I made choices that can't be undone. Some saved lives. Others ended them." A murmur rippled through the crowd, but he didn't stop. "I will not apologize for defending my kind, but I will take responsibility for what that defense cost. Us and the galaxy." Oren stood in the crowd, unmoving. He watched Bishop not as a soldier, but as a man who had finally stepped out from the armor of his own myth. Bishop turned again to the child statue. "Today we begin something new. Not an empire, not an expansion. A record." He gestured to the towering walls behind the monument. Blank. Clean. Waiting. "These walls will not honor heroes. They will remember choices. The good. The brutal. The necessary. The tragic. Everything we did. Every operation. Every directive. Every death." He looked back to the people. No lies. No edits. No silence. The Unity Walls, as they would come to be known, would stretch across 8 kilometers of Earth's eastern continent, an interactive historical archive etched in memory, code, and testimony. Every citizen, soldier, refugee, and pact survivor would have the right to contribute, and each entry would be time-stamped with one of 3 seals: necessary, regrettable, unforgivable. The seal wouldn't be chosen by the government. It would be chosen by the people, one memory at a time. That's how the war truly ended. Not with fire, not with screams, but with admission. Ashvale didn't disappear. Their echo network still existed, but now it didn't attack. Instead, they watched. They reviewed every entry submitted to the Unity walls. They checked for censorship, for manipulation. And Earth, knowing they were watching, stayed honest. A strange balance emerged. Not peace, not alliance, but something older, something more important: accountability. In time, Earth reopened diplomacy, with ex-pact colonies, with independent trade worlds, even with distant species who had once laughed at the Terran threat. But now, Earth wasn't feared because of its ships. It was respected because it had shown the one thing the galaxy had never seen before: restraint after victory, and remorse without collapse. Years later, Bishop walked the Unity walls alone. He wasn't in power anymore. He had stepped down quietly, without speech or ceremony. No successor, no replacement, just a system that no longer needed war to feel strong. He passed names of people he had known, orders he had signed, places he had never seen but had burned from orbit. Every line hit differently. Each one had a seal: necessary, regrettable, unforgivable. One entry stopped him in his tracks: Varine's Reach Atmospheric Strike Seal, unforgivable, submitted by Commander Orin. He stared at it for a long time, then placed his hand on the entry. No override, no edit, just acceptance. Behind him, children were walking with their teachers, young, curious, untouched by the war. They stopped in front of the entry. One boy pointed to the word, unforgivable. "Why'd they do it if it was so bad?" he asked. The teacher looked down at him. "To stop a war. But they said never to do stuff like that." "They learned that too," she said softly. "After." The boy squinted at the name beneath the entry. "Who's Bishop?" Bishop didn't turn, didn't speak, just kept walking. Because that boy didn't need to know his face. Just the lesson. In the stars above, the galaxy kept spinning. The Ardent Pact remained dust. Ashvale became a quiet archive system, warning others when they started to rewrite their own crimes. And Earth? Earth remained scarred. But it never forgot. And that was enough. Epilogue. 50 years later, a satellite drifted through the edge of Sol's space. It carried no weapons, no signal scramblers, no stealth plates. Just a message, a simple one, a probe from a new species, not yet known to Earth. They had intercepted old signals, old warnings, and now they came with curiosity, not conquest. The satellite's transmission repeated in a loop. "We saw the flames. We heard the silence. But we also read the walls. Are you still what the stars once feared?" Earth's response? It wasn't a fleet. It wasn't a threat. Just a reply. One sentence. "We remember what we became. That's how we make sure we never become it again."